Welcome back to Peacock TV. Spoilers, your ultimate destination for everything happening in Salem. Peacock TV spoilers, we've been tracking this for weeks, and the moment we have all been dreading is finally arriving next week. We are officially stepping into the darkest chapter of Dupree DiMera's life. The spoilers reveal that Sarah Horton is going to be tasked with making the hardest phone call a doctor ever has to make. Sarah Horton is going to call Dupree DiMera to inform her that her biopsy results have officially come back from the lab. Naturally, Dupree DiMera is going to be absolutely vibrating with anxiety and will practically beg for the results right then and there over the phone. But Sarah Horton is going to refuse. Instead, Sarah Horton will urge Dupree DiMera to come directly to the hospital and explicitly instruct her to bring Johnny DiMera along for support. Let's be real for a second. We all know exactly what that means. When a doctor refuses to give you test results over the phone and tells you to bring your spouse, it is never to tell you that you are perfectly healthy. Dupree DiMera is going to instantly realize that she needs to brace herself for the absolute worst news imaginable. It sounds like the show is confirming our worst fears. Dupree DiMera actually has breast cancer. That's crazy. This is going to be a massive, life-altering shock that will send shockwaves through the entire canvas. Now, I want to dive deep into the psychology of this moment, starting with my hot take. I personally believe Sarah Horton is handling this in an incredibly cruel manner. I will ruthlessly criticize Sarah Horton for this. I know, medical ethics dictate that you should deliver bad news in person, but think about the sheer emotional torture she is putting her patient through. Sarah Horton is dragging out the agony. She is leaving Dupree DiMera to suffer a full-blown panic attack in the agonizing hours between that phone call and the hospital visit. If you ask me, this is a huge mistake because it strips the patient of their immediate agency. Sarah Horton has suffered immense tragedy in her own life, like losing her baby Mackenzie years ago, so she should know how agonizing waiting in the dark can be. Yet, she delivers this terrifying directive with such clinical detachment. It is infuriating. On the flip side, I want to passionately defend Johnny DiMera. Amazing. I absolutely love how Johnny DiMera is stepping up in this storyline. When Dupree DiMera gets that terrifying phone call, Johnny DiMera does not hesitate. He drops everything to be her absolute rock. If we look back 5 to 10 years at the legacy of the DiMera family, we see a dark history of how DiMera men handle illness and vulnerability. Think about what Stefano DiMera did back in the day. Whenever a woman in his life was sick or in danger, Stefano DiMera would resort to kidnapping specialists, faking deaths, or using immense manipulation to control the situation. Even Johnny's father, EJ DiMera, has a terrible habit of lying to the women he loves under the guise of protecting them. But Johnny DiMera, he is completely breaking the toxic generational curse of the DiMera family. Johnny DiMera isn't trying to manipulate the doctors or control Dupree DiMera. He is simply sitting beside her, holding her hand, and offering pure, unconditional, emotional support. He is proving that he is the best man in that entire family, and their bond is going to be the emotional anchor of this entire breast cancer storyline. However, the psychological burden on Dupree DiMera is absolutely staggering right now. We know from earlier this week that Dupree DiMera has been actively downplaying her biopsy to her mother, Paulina Price. Why? Because Paulina Price is currently having a complete emotional breakdown over the miraculous resurrection of Lexi Carver. Paulina Price is terrified that Abe Carver is going to leave her for his former wife, to the point where Paulina Price is actually packing her bags and crying to Marlena Evans. Dupree DiMera is watching her mother's marriage implode, and as a result, Chanel is choosing to be a martyr. She is swallowing her own mortal terror to protect Paulina Price from further pain. The tragedy of a young woman facing breast cancer while feeling like she cannot even lean on her own mother is just phenomenal, heartbreaking writing. And you won't believe what happens next when we weave in the predictive lore of Salem. While Johnny DiMera is sitting in that sterile hospital room, completely focused on his wife's devastating breast cancer diagnosis, there is a literal target on his back. Let's not forget the massive plot happening in the shadows. Kristen DiMera has just hired Xander Kiriakis to assassinate Johnny DiMera. Can you believe it? The show is setting up a catastrophic intersection of storylines. Imagine the sheer dramatic irony. Johnny DiMera is weeping in the hospital, realizing he might lose the love of his life to a terrible disease, completely unaware that a hitman is tracking his every move. Will Xander Kiriakis actually corner Johnny DiMera in the hospital parking lot? I personally believe that when Xander Kiriakis sees the sheer devastation on Johnny DiMera's face, his lingering shred of humanity will kick in. Xander Kiriakis knows what it is like to love a woman desperately. Just look at his complicated history with Sarah Horton and Gwen Rizchek. I predict Xander Kiriakis will abandon Kristen DiMera's assassination plot the moment he learns about Dupree DiMera's cancer. Furthermore, how is the rest of Salem going to react to this bombshell? I foresee EJ DiMera completely shifting his priorities. Right now, EJ DiMera is playing dirty in the corporate world, fighting with Tony DiMera and obsessing over his past with Kat Green. But when EJ DiMera finds out his daughter-in-law has cancer, I think we will see the DiMera empire's vast resources mobilized. EJ DiMera might try to throw millions of dollars at experimental treatments, which could create a fascinating conflict between Johnny DiMera's desire for normal, ethical medical care and EJ DiMera's ruthless, buy a cure at any cost mentality. This storyline is going to test every single relationship in Salem. It will force Paulina Price to snap out of her Lexi Carver obsession and realize what truly matters. It will test Johnny DiMera's resilience against the dark temptations of his family's power. And it will push Dupree DiMera into the fight of her life. So, I have to ask you all, when Sarah Horton officially drops the cancer diagnosis, do you think Johnny DiMera will stay on the straight and narrow, or will he turn to EJ DiMera's dark resources to save his wife? Drop your wildest theories in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you love deep dives into the psychology of Salem, make sure you smash that subscribe button to Peacock TV Spoilers so you never miss an update. See you next time.